This has been taking over the media like a storm. And everybody has their own opinion, everybody's got their own piece of knowledge to spread on this topic. Alex Edler and trading Alex Edler. Now, I know I've made a video about Alex Edler in the past. That was maybe at like the midway point of the first semester of school, so probably around October-ish. I actually don't really have any idea when I made that video, but there's been a lot of talk about Edler recently, and the reason I'm making this video today is because I was listening to the radio yesterday on my way back from school. Elliotte Friedman was on Sportsnet 650, and it kind of got a little bit heated, if I'm gonna be honest here. Friedman was addressing the Vancouver media's perspective on trading Alex Edler and whether or not Jim Benning is going to go out there, ask to meet with the party, ask to sign Alex Edler to an extension, or towards looking to trading Alex Edler. And there was a big influx of information that was received by the Vancouver media, and earlier this morning I was listening to TSN as I was walking to the bus stop. It was probably like, I want to say like 6:40 a.m. Completely different perspectives were brought up by the guys over there, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that here. The main thing that Elliotte Friedman brought up was a direct response to the Sportsnet guys saying that it would be better to trade Edler because the team is not really all that good, and it would benefit the team more if we got assets for a guy like Alex Edler. And Friedman's main argument to combat that was, if you're going to trade Alexander Edler, what does that do for the team internally? It says to the team that it is not time yet and that we're not supposed to go forward with winning just yet, which Friedman thought was a bad thing to do because the Canucks are literally in a playoff race at the moment. Sure, if you compare their record this year and last year at this point in time, the Canucks only have like 2 extra wins today than they did at this point in the season last year. But this team was supposed to be much worse than last year's team. We lost the Sedins, we lost Vanek, and even though we had a second-year Brock Besser and a new hot young rookie Elias Pettersson coming in, we weren't supposed to be good. But we're probably better than we were supposed to be. And the Vancouver Canucks are establishing themselves in an era without the Sedins, in an era with newer players and younger guys, as a team that is not terrible anymore. And a team that is most likely in the race. Because if you take a look at the rest of the wild card teams, you got other teams in there like Minnesota, you got Anaheim, you got all these other central teams too, like Dallas and whatnot, and none of these teams are teams that you can look at and say, yup, 100% the Vancouver Canucks are going to be worse than. 100% certainty. You can't say that anymore about this team, because we're in the race. So Friedman's position was basically, why do things now? Why are we talking about this now? Wait until the deadline and see if we're in a position that is similar to that of today. Because anything can happen between now and the trade deadline. And the biggest thing that he also brought up was, if Jim Benning is looking towards re-signing Alexander Edler, why would you trade Tanev? Think about that for a second. Tanev and Edler, we can establish, are the 2 best defenders on the Vancouver Canucks. That is without question. So if we're going to keep one of them, what is the point of getting rid of the other? Because if the status quo of the team remains the same that it is today at the end of the season, and we're going into 2019-20 with assumably the same roster and Quinn Hughes, what is there to say that this team is going to be worse next year? Because if you take this team right now and you add Quinn Hughes, we are automatically much better. And this team right now, which is without Hughes, is currently in a wild card hunt. So that in itself was the perspective that Friedman took to say that the Vancouver Canucks would be foolish to even think about something like that at this point in time rather than later. Meanwhile, on TSN, earlier today, I was listening to it, and the main perspective there was that this team just, period, is not ready, regardless of what the standings say, regardless of how good we've seen them be throughout the season. It's evident to see that we should be aiming for championships and legacies, and not a one-time playoff performance. With that being established, the main perspective on TSN this morning was that Edler should get traded, and then he could maybe come back to Vancouver in free agency or something like that. Because if Edler has been a teammate of the Canucks for 13 years, it's finally time for him to do the Canucks a favor and allow the team to get some assets for him when he has an opportunity to come back here whenever he wants in free agency. So overall, there are many different scenarios to thinking about this. Also, another thing I wanted to bring up was Elliotte Friedman thinking about Edler as a trade piece, because when they mentioned that Edler could be traded for a first, Friedman was like, "Are you serious? Only a first? Alex Edler for only a first-round pick?" And everybody in Vancouver who listened to this segment, we were like, whoa, what the heck? Elliotte Friedman, man, what? Because Friedman then said that he feels that Edler could definitely get a first and a prospect. But a lot of Vancouver fans, I'm going to tell you right now, believe that Alex Edler is worth maybe only a first. Because a lot of Vancouver Canucks fans wouldn't even think about saying first and a prospect for Edler. Now this brings up an entirely different thing. Edler has honestly just been so good this year, and a lot of Vancouver fans, in my opinion, honestly, I think we're actually underrating the guy. I know I'm kind of guilty of this too, because if you had to ask me, I would have said, yeah, Edler's only basically worth maybe a second and a third. I wouldn't have ever entertained the idea of a first and a prospect, but looking at it, Edler has honestly been just so good this year, and the fact that the Canucks are better than they thought they would be, everybody thought that they would be terrible, and they're not, which is basically how it is. I know they got shut out like 2 games in a row, but the Canucks' performance this season as a whole is not terrible. And I think that contributes to the idea that Edler is actually worth way more than Vancouver media and Vancouver fans would probably guess. So overall, there are many different positions to take about an Edler trade, but it's kind of weird to think about all of it as one, because everybody has their own opinions, and everybody conflicts with each other, and it's kind of scary at times. But overall, though, who really knows what's going to happen? If it were up to me, I'd say that we probably should trade Edler for assets and have him come back. Because if Edler remains as legitimately one of the best Canucks defenders ever, and the best Canucks defender on this team today, we would probably be very happy to have him on a playoff run if we were to have that soon. We'd probably like to have Edler on the team next year to mentor a guy like Quinn Hughes. Same thing with Tanev. If you're gonna keep Tanev, what's the point in trading Edler? Because if you keep Tanev, that kind of establishes the fact that the Canucks kind of want to remain competitive. Because honestly, Tanev and Edler have been the subject of trade rumors forever, and everybody kind of knows this, everybody has their own opinions about it, but it's just a lot to think about in regards to the status quo of the team, the context of the team, the guys that we have coming up into the team, and the guys that we already have today. Like, I know we should probably trade guys that are not being used, like Michael Del Zotto. He could probably get traded, maybe fetch something. Maybe guys like Derek Pouliot get traded, who knows? But Edler and Tanev are the big fish, and they will obviously grab yourself the most out of any of the defense that we have today. It's just kind of weird to think about how some people very much believe that Edler is worth much more than just a first. Because I know the Vancouver media only thinks of him as a guy who's worth maybe that I thought of, maybe a second and a third. And I think we are just kind of underrating Edler, and it feels kind of bad now that I think about it. Oh boy, Edler has legitimately been really good. It's just that I don't know what I want to think about when it comes to this kind of discussion. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Plus, that Shosai Sign Gaming. and bye.